In this video, we will cover the chi-square test for independence, when to use it, how to calculate it, and of course, we will run through a worked example to show it in action step by step. Over the past 3 videos, we have been playing the part of an NBA basketball coach looking to assess how our team's mean vertical leap stacks up. We've put in place a one sample t-test to compare our team to the entire NBA. We've applied an independent samples t-test to compare our team to our rival team, and we've used a paired t-test to assess any improvements in vertical leap after a targeted training program. Now, as coach, we always want to have the best players on the court at any point in time. We recently signed a new player to the team and he's performing well. So the question we're asking is the 3-point shooting percentage of our newly signed player higher than that of our current star player? And you'll notice that this question is referring to a proportion, or more specifically a percentage, which is a different type of data to what we've used in our hypothesis tests to date. And thus, we need to apply a different type of test. And this is exactly where the chi-square test of independence comes in. So let's just start by looking at the data for the new player. Of the 20 3-point shots that he's attempted so far in his short career, he has successfully landed 12 of them. So a success rate of 60%. And to be honest, as coach, we know that the success rate is extremely good, and we wonder if we should bring the new player into our starting team ahead of our star player, who we are pretty sure isn't shooting at a rate of 60%. So we look at his data too, and we see that we were right. He's only making his 3-point shots at a rate of 49.3%. So we're about to make the big announcement that we are indeed swapping in the new player, but then we remember all of these statistical tests that we've learned about so far, and we figure that we may as well see if we can do something similar here in order to be confident that we're making the right decision. I mean, this new player, he's only attempted 20 shots so far, whereas the star player has attempted over 10 times that number. Is there enough data here for the new player to know whether this will be his true 3-point shooting percentage? On top of that, putting a star player on the bench could have huge implications for the team dynamic, so we need to be sure. So let's do this. The intuition of the chi-square test is all based around a matrix, and in our example, since we have 2 players and essentially a binary outcome, so whether they make the shot or whether they miss a shot, we can reduce this down to a simple 2x2 matrix. So how do we set this all up? Well, in this matrix, we will have a row for each of the players, and we will have a column for the outcomes, which here are the number of shots made and the number of shots missed. Within the matrix, we need to fill in the appropriate numbers from the tables on the left of screen. So for example, the new player made 12 shots and he missed 8. And the star player, well, he made 101 shots and missed 104. And as I mentioned a moment ago, this is all we really need in order to carry on with the calculations for this chi-square test. But as we must always do before we run any numbers, before we run the test itself, we need to go and specify our null hypothesis, our alternate hypothesis, and our acceptance criteria. And we set those up in exactly the same way as we have done for all of the other tests that we've looked at in this series so far. Here, our null hypothesis will be that the 3-point shooting percentage for both players will be equal. Our alternate hypothesis, which remember is kind of what we're testing for or what we're interested in, will be that the 3-point shooting percentage for the new player is indeed significantly higher than that of the star player. For our acceptance criteria, like all of the other tests that we've run so far, let's again just put in the commonly used value of 0.05. Now again, just like all of the t-tests that we've run through in the prior videos, we have 3 key steps to get us from here to our conclusion. We must first find the critical value for our test, and again, this is based on both our acceptance criteria and a value for the degrees of freedom, which here is nice and easy to calculate, and we'll look over that in a moment. Following that, we then need to calculate not our t-statistic, but our chi-square statistic. And this plays exactly the same role as the t-statistic did, in that where it sits relative to the critical value will determine our conclusion, namely whether we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. So let's do this. Let's start right at the top with our critical value. Now, just like with the other tests, the easiest way to find this value is from a pre-populated chi-squared lookup table, like this one on screen here. And as we've seen in the past, and as I mentioned a moment ago, to find this critical value, we need both our acceptance criteria and a value for degrees of freedom. For a chi-squared test, the degrees of freedom can be calculated with this logic here. So the degrees of freedom is equal to the number of rows, or in other words, the number of categories, minus 1, multiplied by the number of columns, or in other words, the number of outcomes, minus 1. For us, we have two rows, so 2 minus 1 in the first part of that formula, and we also have two columns, so 2 minus 1 in that second part of the formula as well. 2 minus 1 for each of those equals 1, and 1 multiplied by 1 equals 1. So like I say, nice and easy in our case here. So if we return to our lookup table, we can put that in. Then if we also specify our acceptance criteria value of 0.05 at the crossroads there, we find our critical value, and you can see that is a value of 3.841. So this will be the line in the sand based on our acceptance criteria of 0.05. If we calculate a chi-square statistic that is higher than this critical value, we will reject the null hypothesis. And why will we do this? Well, in this case, since our critical value is based on our acceptance criteria of 0.05, we would essentially be saying that if the null hypothesis was true, we would expect to see a chi-squared statistic as extreme as this less than 5% of the time. And because something occurring less than 5% of the time is quite rare, this would suggest to us that the null hypothesis is unlikely to be true. Now conversely, if we calculate our chi-square statistic and it is lower than 3.841, we would fail to reject the null hypothesis. And why would we do this? Well, in this case, we are saying if the null hypothesis was true, we would expect to see a chi-square statistic as extreme as this at least 95% of the time. And because something occurring at least 95% of the time is quite high, this would suggest to us that the null hypothesis is actually quite likely to be true. So those are our two possible scenarios. We have our critical value, but we still need our chi-square statistic. So let's go and figure out what that is. For this, let's head back to our 2x2 matrix and discuss what we need to do from here. Firstly, let's add in the totals to our matrix here by just summing up the shots in each row and each column. So for example, for the new player, we have 12 plus 8 equals 20. And then say for the missed shots column, we have 8 plus 104 equals 112. Let's also add in the overall total number of 3-point shots as well. And you can see that at the bottom right of the table with a value of 225. Now, all of these values in the table on screen here, these are known as the observed frequencies. They are the values that actually happened, the real values that took place. But what is important to know is that the chi-square test of independence is all about comparing these observed frequencies to another set of values known as the expected frequencies. But what exactly are these? Well, luckily for us, they are somewhat intuitive and also nice and easy to calculate. So let's do this. Let's give ourselves another matrix. There we go. And to calculate the expected frequency for each cell, we just need to multiply the row total and the column total and then divide that by the total number of observations. So as an example, for the new player, the expected number of shots he would make is 20, the row total appropriate for this cell, multiplied by 113, the column total appropriate for this cell, all divided by 225, the overall total. And this equals 10.04. But what does this represent? Well, this is the expected number of successful shots for the new player, but based upon all of the data that we have. Or in other words, what we're doing here is we're combining both players' shooting data, and when we do that, we can see that 113 shots were made out of a total of 225 attempts, and we're applying this proportion or percentage to the 20 shots that the new player attempted, and our calculation gives us the expected number he should make. Now, as the new player took far fewer shots than the star player, his stats are essentially given a lower weighting in this calculation, and this intuitively makes sense. If you've not taken many shots, why should we think that your stats are representative of the truth? Conversely, if you've taken a greater number of shots, well, we can rely on your data a lot more. Anyway, let's keep moving forward in this process, and if we were to apply that same logic onto the rest of the cells in our new matrix, so always multiplying the row and column totals for the cell in question and dividing by the overall total, if we did this, we would get these values here. So these are the expected frequencies for each of those cells. The next step in this process is for us to calculate our chi-square statistic. And to do this, we're actually going to bring in another matrix to show this in action. So for this part of the calculation, and we will again do this cell by cell, we need this logic here. So for each cell in our new matrix, we are going to take the expected value for that corresponding cell away from the observed value and square this result. We will then divide that by the expected value. So again, let's show this in action with an example. So for the new player, the chi-square statistic based on the shots he made, so the top left cell of the new matrix, would be calculated as the observed frequency of 12 minus the expected frequency of 10.04, all squared, and the result of this would be divided again by the expected frequency of 10.04. And this gives a value of 0.38. Again, if we applied that same logic to each of the cells, we would end up with results that looked like this. From here, to calculate the total chi-square statistic for our test, which is the figure that we're after, we simply add up the values in each cell of our latest matrix. So 0.38 plus 0.38 plus 0.04 plus 0.04, which gives 0.84. And since 0.84 is lower than our critical value of 3.841, we fail to reject the null hypothesis, or in more formal terms, we would say with an acceptance criteria or a significance level of 0.05, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Thinking about this in less formal statistical terms, we could say that from the 3-point shooting data we had, there is not enough evidence to suggest that the new player has a significantly higher shooting percentage than the star player. And as coach, we might have dodged a bullet here. We were ready to put our star player on the bench, but now I think we should be a bit more patient, perhaps collect a bit more data before making any major changes like that. But there you go. That is what happens under the hood of a chi-square test of independence. And even though 99 times out of 100 you will apply these tests using Python or R or Excel, it is so important to know how it all actually works. It has been awesome running through this with you. Keep learning, keep moving forward, and I will see you in the next video.